Hey rock lovers, today I wanted to talk about cabochons. So this is probably traditionally what you would think of as a cabochon. And a lot of people describe a cabochon as a domed polished rock. But more ideally, I think the more accurate description of a cabochon is a non-faceted polished rock for setting in jewelry. So in other words, a slab wouldn't be meant, it's polished, but it wouldn't necessarily be meant for setting in jewelry. Let me get another cab here and I'll show you why I'm saying that it's any polished, non-faceted rock meant for setting in jewelry. So we've got this piece here. It's not domed. It's kind of beveled on the edge. It's shaped into a chevron. It's a symmetrical shape. Of course, we can have a freeform shape as well. Here's another one that is not domed. And it's both sides have been polished and beveled, so it could be set in something that, like a pendant. And here's a piece of purple passion that I've made without any girdle on it. And I did that because I'm going to put this in a prong setting. Now, there are some advantages to making some cabochons. This one's domed without a girdle. Say you have a really thin piece of material and there just isn't room for a girdle, you could and be able to dome it. Or else you could make it flat with a bevel like the other pieces I just showed you. Here's another piece of rhodonite. I beveled both sides, polished them both up. Now the disadvantage to making a flat piece like this is it's really hard to polish. It's much easier to polish a domed piece than it is when it's flat like this. Here's a free-form piece of grape jasper. It's got a girdle. When you're making your cabochon, you want that girdle to be as even as possible, so when you place it in the bezel, it looks nice. And you want your top of your dome nice and even with no flat spots or facets when you are doming it. And freeform has the advantage of you may end up with a larger cab and you can avoid bad areas as opposed to having to make it smaller when you're making a regular geometric shape. Here's a triangular piece of chrysocolla I turned into a cab. It's a little bit thicker because it's closer to what that people would call high dome. And the bigger your cab, it's more likely you're going to need a thicker slab of material if you want to dome it. If you don't want to dome it, then it doesn't matter, except that a large cab that's really thin may fracture. Here's a piece of jasper off of Crazy Lace Hill that I turned into an oval cab. Now I did quite a bit of research on what is the bevel angle supposed to be on this girdle. And from everything I've read, it's between 5 and 15 degrees. And the reason it's beveled is to hold it into your bezel. However, I think 15 degrees is really excessive. You have to understand that when you're pushing this bezel over and you're bending it to lock your stone into the setting, you're making a smaller circle essentially. And you can end up with something that looks wrinkled or crimped if you have too high of an angle. So I really think like 6 degrees is ideal. I think when you're getting up above 11 degrees, it's too much of an angle for the girdle of your stone. Here's another oval one. This is a piece of Wonderstone. Here's a piece of green jasper. First, when the Rock Queen found this, I thought this might be jade, but it is not translucent in any way, shape, or form. So this is just a really nice colored piece of green jasper. So when making our cabochons, we have a number of considerations. The shape, the girdle, the angle of that girdle, whether we're going to dome it, whether it's going to be high dome, low dome, flat, beveled. Then we also have to consider on the back this tiny little chamfer that we put on there. Now the reason for that chamfer is on harder stones you want to prevent chipping, and it makes space if you have excess solder after you've soldered your bezel onto your back plate. And speaking of bezel wire, I've got 2 pieces of bezel wire here. These are 5/32. And most of your bezel wire comes in 1/8 up to about 1/4, 3/8. You can make it whatever you want, but standard when you buy it, and it's usually 999 fine silver. This is a 28 gauge piece. I think that's too thin. When you're trying to deal with polishing at the end, you may polish right through this. Even if you are successful at soldering it, thinner pieces have a greater tendency to melt when you're soldering. But in the end, it's really the issue. You might polish right through this. This is 24 gauge right here, and you can see the difference. This is what I usually use, 24 gauge fine bezel wire. Hope you learned something in this video, find it useful. Hope you like and subscribe. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. Thank you.